Hello and welcome to Built on Air, a podcast and video series about all things Airtable. I'm your host, Zoe Vanderplu, and before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsor, OpenSide. Visit openside.com for products and services that will take your Airtable to the next level. Use promo code BuiltOnAir, one word, all caps, for a one-time $20 credit off of any purchase. Today I have the pleasure of talking with Alex Hillman, an educator and serial entrepreneur. Along with partner Amy Hoy, he runs Stacking the Bricks, a business that creates content and courses enabling developers and creatives to start their own successful businesses. In this video, Alex walks us through his relationship-based CRM, he built an Airtable, that allows Stacking the Bricks to measure their most valuable asset, the students themselves. He discusses how he uses Airtable to collect quantitative and qualitative data on their students' successes, both big and small, throughout their courses and beyond. For our full interview with Alex, visit BuiltOnAir.com. And while you're at it, sign up for our mailing list for weekly updates on new episodes and other fun Airtable things. Cool. Well, I guess that has been like a really excellent sort of teaser. So now I'm really curious to see the base itself. So why don't you go ahead and share your screen and get set up and kind of just walk us through it.
All right, here we go. So you should see my screen now.
Yes.
So this has been scrubbed for some personal information, although if you look at student product names, I figured it wouldn't be bad to give my students' product a plug, so if you want to go hunt anybody down. But the main grid, the first one that I started building out is a list of our students who are here in initials, which of our products they're working from. So our flagship product is a course called 30 by 500 that teaches everything from how to choose an audience that you actually could create and sell things to, how to build a connection with that audience, how to build your email list, and how to figure out what products to sell and how to actually launch and sell those. We also have a book called JFS, that's just effing ship, more of a sort of productivity / creative bend for people who are good at creating things but often get stuck in that last 10%. We help you take stuff across the finish line. So we get some really good stories from people that have bought the book, either as a precursor to 30 by 500 or just on its own. And so we're keeping all of those in the same place. So I have the product, our product in here, if I wanted to filter out just JFS stories or just 30 by 500. And we've got a handful of other products as well that we'll be filling in here as well.
Nice.
The student products, as well as the Stacking the Bricks products, are both linked fields, though, so I don't have to constantly retype them. So the student products field, or student product table, I should say, is a separate tab. So I'm able to view that on its own. I can view the creator, and I keep track of URLs. As you can see, I'm still filling in some things. But that is a separate table, as well as our list of products. So if I wanted to view who are all the students that have been attached to a particular product, that's over there. But by making that a linked table, which for those of you who are getting new, so that's a field type, linked to our products, and the ability to link multiple records means that each one of our students could actually have been associated with one or more of our products and one or more of their own products. And as I start filling things in the updates tab, which we'll get to in a second, the more things are filled out here, the faster that table sort of auto updates. And I'll show you the magic of that in a second. I mentioned product type is a big one. A lot of people enter into our sort of universe and assume everybody ships ebooks. Well, as you can see, there are quite a number of ebooks. Ebooks are sort of entry level is really low, and so it's a great fast starting point. So a lot of people do start there, but it's not the only option. And one of my favorite parts about this is how it shows how many people have started with an ebook, but then grown to a video course, maybe a physical book, conferences, entire publishing company. So sort of seeing how these products stack up together, and then audiences as well. So I mentioned before, we were sort of a design developer heavy student base, but you can see that within that there are specific branches of development, or DevOps, or a specific programming language, and then some like weird stuff in the middle here, like trucking companies. One of our students who's been quite successful runs a SaaS platform that does bookkeeping for like small to mid-sized trucking companies. super random, not my world, but it's been fascinating to watch him grow that business.
Right.
I set up a checkbox field in here for whether or not that person is okay with us sharing their revenue publicly, just so the way I don't have to constantly check, hey, is it okay if we share that number? And then I did clear it out here, but I have annual revenue. So it's like whatever the latest annual revenue number I've gotten from them is, as well as their lifetime revenue. And you can see down here at the bottom, I've got that automatically summing things up. So when those are filled in, I get to see a nice big number down at the bottom, which makes me feel really good. We use Help Scout for our support, and so I added this field, and this may end up getting like refactored into another table somewhere because I really want this to be able to be multiple links. But basically, this just links to if information came in through our support inbox, what was the conversation? Because a lot of times that ends up being more of a dialogue instead of just a throwing a bit of piece of information over the wall. Is a little bit of back and forth. So having that linked directly to the student there is handy. Obviously, their contact information, screenshots. I don't know if you can see very well. I don't want to zoom in because there's actual numbers, but these are graphs usually. And the graphs, they're going up and to the right, which are my favorite kind of graphs. The URL for their product as well, which again, I believe this is another linked field. And then updates and case studies. And that's where things get really fun because like this grid is useful, but it's mostly for reference.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, I'm putting a person's name in here, some basic information, and then I'm not actually touching this very much. What is cool is when I get to go to updates. And the updates field, like this is my go-to when stuff comes in from wherever it comes from. So I start with today's date, which is just as easy as clicking in and clicking the date. And then I start typing here a student. So let's say it's MJ here. I like that it's autocomplete. And as soon as I click on that student, what's awesome is that it auto-populates what products of ours they purchased and what products of theirs they have. Because these are lookup columns, lookup fields, where it says look up the student that I just put in and drop the Stacking the Bricks product in that column, and the same thing for product. So this sort of automatically populating means I'm spending more time talking about it than I would actually do it. Effectively 4 clicks and my first 4 columns are already populated.
Right.
And I've got my update. I've kind of squished the column short because there is personal, identifying stuff in here. But what's nice is I can just, grab a copy paste from a chat or from that email or whatever it is and just drop that quote in there. And I have that reference. And that reference is tied to this date. So over time, I end up with a student with multiple updates across multiple dates, and I can start building a table that is filtered by all of the updates that a student gave me over the history of them having been a student, which I can then use for case studies, which is the last table. We're really just getting started with this. There's not a lot to see here. But over here, what I'm essentially doing is tracking, okay, we've been collecting information. Now we've got sort of a complete picture. I want to hand this off to, we work with a company called Case Study Buddy that helps us do more in-depth interviews and actually compile a case study narrative. This gives me all this amazing raw material to give them before they even interview the student. Because a lot of times this student doesn't even remember all of these little details. So
Right.
This is sort of like the culmination of all of this information gets tracked into a case study field where I can say, okay, it's time to do a case study with MJ. Status is that they agreed. Future versions of this table, I may add a column that links to where they agreed to do it, may link to the conversation where I connected them to Case Study Buddy, actually link to the PDF of the case study itself. So this is sort of like, in a lot of ways, a real look at the life cycle of what a student goes through, because it continues over time, it evolves over time. And like I was talking about before, one of my favorite things about Airtable as a product is the fact that I can so easily add new things to this over time. I don't have to figure everything else out up front. I've been adding to this over time, and I can feel confident that even if for some reason I wanted to change the a field type, Airtable is really good at even, migrating these, multi-selects into something else, whatever that might be. So that's cool. And we haven't even really done anything with views yet, but what makes sense to me is the ability to create filters. So maybe if I want to hand some of this material off to our case study partner, without having to copy paste stuff out, I can create a view that narrows everything into one place, just send them a link, and that's now a read-only, potentially even a password-protected archive of all of the updates from a student, and say, you can read through all of this so you're prepped for asking them questions, and that way they're not wasting our students' time asking questions that our students already gave us answers to, and they can really get into the nitty-gritty.
Right, yeah, and I think part of this too is like it really, especially when you're reaching out to them for case studies, I can imagine as a student, it makes them feel really special because they're like, oh, you saved like all of my Slack messages. And like you said, you're like, a lot of people probably forget even what they tell you, as the years go by. So it's kind of like a cool, like, it's a database, but also like a scrapbook sort of almost,
That's a good way to describe it. I like that.
Yeah, I really like sort of how you've, and you can keep building, right? Like you're like, okay, well, I have all of my students in here finally. Next, I have to collect all this info into the updates. Okay, actually, I want to do something with this info. It becomes case studies,
That's right.
and then maybe even down the line, right? Case studies could become sort of like a retrospective or something, of a select group of your students. So, yeah, and also really, I enjoy your creative solutions for kind of like hiding sensitive data in this too, while doing minimal work. I really enjoyed that.
Thanks.
So awesome. Yeah, this is really cool. And so are you guys like just kind of manually updating it every day as you get new emails in your inbox or Slack messages?
Yeah, this is probably one of the least integrated Airtables that I've built. What probably makes sense, again, in a future version of this is using Zapier to automatically add students to the students table when they join,
Mm-hmm.
and then having some fields that are built around more the early milestones. One of my biggest complaints about Airtable, and I'm tracking the support threads, so this is not my own, I'm not the only one complaining about it, but the lack of a like last updated field.
Yes.
What I would love would be a thing that is a student record and then something that keeps track of the last time we heard from somebody so that I can proactively reach out and say, hey, you joined 3 months ago. We haven't heard anything from you. Want to know how you're doing and if we can help with anything. The reality of our business, and I think this is true of a lot of people who are in some sort of educational business, is people kind of go off into their busy corner work. Like some of our most successful alumni, we didn't hear from until way after they were successful. And they're like, oh yeah, I definitely learned all that stuff from you guys. We didn't get all the little steps along the way. But it's because of that, it's also impossible to tell the difference between someone who's struggling and suffering in silence that we could help past a roadblock and become successful, and someone who's just quietly grinding away in a corner and is going to come and tell us, oh yeah, I'm a millionaire now. There's really, from our view, no difference. And so if Airtable is able to help us keep track of who have we heard from, who have we not heard from in a while, and I mean, even something that potentially could be semi-automated, where if we haven't heard from somebody in 6 months, that it sends something, or at the very least prompts me to say, like, send a personal note. I don't think we need it to send automated emails. We don't have, we're not talking about, hundreds or thousands of students a week. So it would be fine for me to, every Monday get a list of here's students we haven't heard from in the last 6 months and send a couple of personal emails. I think we'd get more people going who got stuck, and we'd probably hear more success stories that are out there in the wild we just don't know exist yet.
Right. Yeah. It's like the whole kind of point of the space, I think, is to make sure that you kind of, even though, you're tracking data and it's a database, you're kind of maintaining that humanity and like that relationship you have with your students.
Exactly. Which somehow no other CRM actually does.
I know. Right. And I think that kind of goes back to our point earlier in the podcast too, where, tracking relationships now for your contacts is becoming way more important in some cases than just tracking, okay, they hit this milestone, or like, oh, this, person purchased this thing at this time or whatever,
Exactly.
Yeah, so you've done a really excellent job here of just tracking all of these kind of multiple dimensions of your students. I really enjoyed seeing that.
Thank you.
And so I guess just to kind of wrap up, tell everyone if they kind of want to learn more about you as Alex or you as Stacking the Bricks, where should they go?
So while I just look at you on the screen share, I'll pull up stackingthebricks.com. That is our main website for all of our articles, and the podcast is down here at the bottom as well. You can also follow me on Twitter. That's probably my main favorite active place to be on the internet, at Alex Hillman. And I'd love to hear from you on Twitter.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time, Alex. We've really enjoyed hearing about your various projects and also your Airtable explorations.
Thank you so much for having me.
See ya.
See ya.